The stairwell was silent, just the echo of footsteps, a shadow gliding across the dim concrete. Seconds later, a scream tore through the courtyard, then a sickening thud. Neighbors rushed out, confused, startled, unsure of what they had just heard. When they looked up, there was no one on the landing, no struggle, no witness, only the impossible question that would haunt this case forever. What really happened in those final seconds before Aleyna Aggul fell? Because nothing about that moment, nothing about that night, matches the story that was written on paper. Aleyna Aggul was born in 2003 in Iğdır, a quiet city in eastern Turkey, surrounded by rolling hills and small rural communities. She was the youngest child of Kemal and his wife, whose name was never made public. The Aggul family lived a modest life, one built around school, work, and the close bonds of a typical Turkish household. By 2018, Alina's life seemed perfectly ordinary. She attended school, had a small but loyal group of friends, and loved spending time outdoors. Those who knew her described her as warm, cheerful, and full of dreams. But that same year, tragedy struck the family. Her older brother, 6 years her senior, drowned while swimming off the coast of Marmaris. The sudden loss devastated the family. For Aleyna, who had looked up to her brother all her life, the grief was almost unbearable. Still, she tried to move forward. By her final year of high school, she had found the strength to rebuild herself. She began taking private lessons to prepare for university entrance exams. Her teachers said she was determined to study and make her late brother proud. At the same time, her natural beauty and gentle personality had drawn a large following on social media. Friends and strangers alike admired her for her elegance and charm, a bright light in a town where everyone knew each other. Her father, still mourning his son, found comfort in Aleyna's ambitions. She was his last hope for a future that might bring peace to their broken family. But behind her smiles, Aleyna was fighting a secret battle, one that no one around her could see. On September 29, 2021, Aleyna walked into a police station trembling and pale. She told officers a horrifying story. For months she had been harassed and blackmailed by a 42-year-old man named Gökhan, a married businessman and father of two. Gökhan was wealthy, the owner of a transport company and involved in real estate. His reputation in the community was that of a powerful and respected man. One of his sons, Gökturk, aged 19, attended the same school as Aleyna. Some people later claimed the two were romantically involved, but according to those close to her, their relationship never went beyond friendship. According to Aleyna's testimony, everything began when Gökhan discovered private photographs of her on his son's phone. Furious and possessive, he summoned Aleyna to his office. When she arrived, he confronted her with the images and threatened to share them with her family and friends. Terrified of being humiliated and ashamed, Aleyna did what he demanded. That day, Gökhan assaulted her. What followed was months of relentless abuse and manipulation. Aleyna told police that Gökhan forced her to meet him repeatedly, threatening to expose her photos and videos if she refused. He controlled her through fear, exploiting the trauma of her family's recent tragedy. Each time she tried to break free, he would send new threats, reminders of what he could destroy with a single click. 10 days before going to the police, Aleyna decided she couldn't take it anymore. She blocked him on every platform and stopped answering his calls. But the harassment only escalated. Gökhan created fake social media accounts to reach her, sending messages and appearing unexpectedly near her home. The night before she filed the complaint, he showed up at her doorstep. Out of fear and desperation, she agreed to step outside and talk to him in his car, hoping it would finally end the nightmare. But what unfolded next was far from peaceful. According to her later statement to police, Gokhan appeared intoxicated, his tone unstable, his behavior unpredictable. He told her they were going to his house. Aleyna refused. She had no intention of following him anywhere. She wanted the nightmare to end. Her refusal angered him. Gokhan's temper began to flare as he accused her of seeing another young man, basing his wild claims on supposed evidence he said he'd found on her social media. Aleyna denied everything. She told him she wasn't involved with anyone else. All she wanted was to be free from his control. But the more she tried to assert herself, the more violent he became. In her testimony, Aleyna described how Gokhan grabbed her by the arm with brutal force, shouting at her, his rage spiraling out of control. When she pushed back and tried to scream, he covered her mouth and nose with one hand, suffocating her until she nearly lost consciousness. The assault lasted only minutes, but it left her terrified and bruised. Somehow, she managed to break free and escape into the night. The following morning, she received a chilling message from Gokhan. In it, he told her to end her own life, or he would do it for her. That threat was the final blow for the already fragile young woman. Aleyna went to a doctor to have her injuries documented. The physician confirmed visible signs of physical assault. Armed with the medical report, Aleyna returned to the police station and formally filed charges against Gokhan. She accused him of blackmail, intentional injury, threats, defamation, and violation of privacy. But perhaps justice came too late. Just one day later, on the morning of September 30th, 2021, tragedy struck. Witnesses reported seeing Aleyna on the staircase of a 5-story apartment building near her family's home. Moments later, she fell. When paramedics arrived, it was already too late. Aleyna had died instantly upon impact. She was only 18 years old. At first, authorities labeled her death a suicide, but almost immediately, inconsistencies began to surface. People who knew Aleyna could not believe she had taken her own life. She had recently enrolled in university prep courses, talked about her future with excitement, and had even written to police just a day earlier, begging for protection from Gokhan, the man she had accused of assaulting and blackmailing her. To those who had read her plea for help, the idea of suicide made no sense. Not after months of threats, not after the desperate attempts to escape him. As details emerged, anger spread across social media. Screenshots of Aleyna's earlier complaint circulated online, showing her fear and the lack of action from authorities. People began to see her death not as a personal tragedy, but as the final act of a system that had failed to protect her. Many called it what they believed it truly was: a murder disguised as suicide. Thousands of users, especially young women, rallied online under hashtags demanding justice. Their outrage quickly moved from screens to the streets. Local students and women's rights activists organized a march in her honor, determined to make her voice heard even after death. Although local authorities refused to authorize the demonstration, dozens gathered anyway, including Aleyna's grieving family, outside the municipal square. Holding banners and red roses, they chanted her name, demanding truth, accountability, and justice. They later walked to the apartment building where she had fallen, placing flowers and candles at the entrance. The site became a small memorial, a silent protest against the violence that had stolen yet another young life. At the same time, police were intensifying their investigation into Aleyna's death, determined to uncover what had really happened. During the search of her bedroom, investigators made a heartbreaking discovery. On her mirror, written in lipstick, they found a brief but haunting message, a direct accusation in which Aleyna held Gökhan responsible for her death. Beside the mirror lay a notebook filled with her final thoughts. Inside, she had written a letter addressed to her abuser. Her words revealed the depth of her suffering and painted a disturbing portrait of the man who had destroyed her peace. Aleyna described Gökhan as a neurotic person, incapable of compassion or basic humanity. She accused him not only of assaulting her, but also of abusing his own son's girlfriend. In the same note, she wrote that he had betrayed his friends by sleeping with their wives, and that he had tormented her relentlessly, breaking her down until, as she wrote, she could no longer bear to live. In the pages of that notebook, Aleyna described how he had manipulated and terrorized her for months, how his cruelty shattered her mental health and drove her to the edge. She said his complete lack of remorse showed a man without conscience. As police continued their investigation, they uncovered an earlier report revealing that Aleyna had previously attempted suicide on May 14, 2020. Back then, she had been stopped by bystanders near an unfinished building. Authorities had intervened just in time. In the days leading up to her death, Aleyna had desperately sought help. After enduring months of threats, harassment, and physical violence, she wrote a statement in her own handwriting, a final plea for protection. In that letter, she asked the authorities to keep her aggressor, Gökhan, away from her and to ensure her safety. Yet despite her courage to speak out, no formal action was taken. The police never initiated a case for sexual relations with a minor, even though Aleyna was only 17 years old at the time of the assaults. According to police records, one of the most alarming incidents had taken place months earlier. Gökhan had called Aleyna, demanding that she come to see him. When she refused, he became enraged and appeared at her house wielding a knife, shouting her name in the street. Out of fear and shame, Aleyna agreed to go with him, hoping to prevent her family from discovering what was happening. Once inside his car, Gökhan drove her to one of his bachelor apartments. There, in a fit of jealousy, he demanded to see her phone. Aleyna told him she had left it at home. That simple answer provoked another violent outburst. Gökhan struck her, seized the keys to her house, and prevented her from leaving. Terrified and trembling, Aleyna eventually managed to escape. Overwhelmed by despair, she ran to the same construction site where she had previously tried to end her life in 2020. After gathering all this information, the police finally moved to arrest Gökhan and his son. Both were taken into custody for questioning. During his interrogation, Gökhan appeared calm and self-assured. In court, he claimed that he and Aleyna had been in a mutual relationship for about a year, insisting that their connection was consensual. Gökhan tried to paint a very different picture of events. According to his version, Aleyna had called him 2 days before her death, saying her mother was in a rehabilitation center and that she needed to buy supplies but couldn't afford them. He claimed that they met. He bought what she needed and even accompanied her to visit her mother in the hospital. Later that night, they met again, though he insisted that nothing intimate happened between them. The next day, he said, they saw each other once more, went shopping for hospital items, and he then dropped her off at home. Gökhan told the court he had repeatedly tried to end their relationship, but that Aleyna would threaten to harm herself whenever he attempted to leave. He also accused her of drinking heavily and insisted that on the day of her death, he was at home the entire time, proof of which, he said, could be found in the security camera footage from his apartment building. He ended his testimony with a defiant remark. The truth will come out at the end of the investigation. Meanwhile, rumors were spreading quickly across the city. Rumors involving his son. Several sources claimed that Gökturk, after learning of Aleyna's death, had shown up drunk at the scene carrying a knife. It was then that police arrested him. During questioning, Gökturk told investigators that Aleyna had been a close friend from school. He admitted that in recent months he had learned through mutual friends that his father and Aleyna were having a relationship. Shocked and disgusted, he said he had not spoken to his father for 4 months. But on September 29th, the night before Aleyna's death, the situation reached a breaking point for him. Overwhelmed by the gossip and humiliation, he decided to confront her directly. He tried to call her 9 times, but she never answered. He then attempted to reach his father, who also ignored his calls and messages. When he heard the devastating news the next day, that Aleyna had died, Gökturk took a taxi home. Soon after, he learned that both he and his father were wanted by the police. He decided to surrender voluntarily. In his statement, he said he had been carrying the knife only because he feared retaliation from Aleyna's family. 3 days after Aleyna's death, Gökturk was released without charges, while Gökhan was freed under judicial supervision. The court imposed minor restrictions. He was required to report regularly and forbidden to leave the province or the country. The decision sent shockwaves through the community. Friends and relatives of Aleyna were outraged. Her father, Kemal, publicly accused the authorities of orchestrating a cover-up. Speaking to the local press, he declared that the narrative of suicide was false, that his daughter had been murdered. He insisted that her body bore no fractures consistent with a fall, claiming the evidence pointed to foul play. Rumors had also begun circulating through the city that Gökhan had a mistress, a nurse, who may have used her medical knowledge to help him carry out a plan to end Aleyna's life. Kemal reminded everyone who would listen that Aleyna had just turned 18, had been preparing for university, and was full of dreams for the future. He insisted that his daughter never drank alcohol, yet the autopsy report revealed high levels of alcohol in her blood. He was convinced she had been forced to drink that night, perhaps to weaken her or to stage her death. Still, some of the father's claims conflicted with forensic findings. According to the official autopsy, Aleyna's body showed severe injuries consistent with a fall from a great height. There were fractures in her skull, ribs, and thoracic vertebrae, as well as internal bleeding. The medical examiner concluded that her death was caused by blunt force trauma from the fall. After the autopsy, Aleyna's body was released to her family. Her funeral was held quietly at the local cemetery, where hundreds gathered to mourn. But sorrow quickly turned to anger when the court allowed Gökhan to remain free under judicial supervision. The district prosecutor objected to this decision and appealed to a higher criminal court, yet the appeal was rejected. Gökhan stayed out of prison for the moment. Despite this setback, prosecutors pressed forward with a deeper investigation. They analyzed Aleyna's phones and social media accounts, uncovering a disturbing digital trail. The messages between her and Gökhan showed clear evidence of blackmail, manipulation, and threats. Aleyna had lived in constant fear, forced to obey him under the weight of his intimidation. When police searched Gökhan's home, they noticed something suspicious. His cell phone was missing. Investigators believed he had hidden or destroyed it, knowing it likely contained the incriminating videos and photos he used to control Aleyna. 8 days after her death, armed with the new findings, the court issued an arrest warrant. Gökhan was taken back into custody, now facing multiple charges: incitement to suicide, blackmail, intentional injury, threats, defamation, and violation of privacy. In a new statement, Gökhan repeated that he and Aleyna had a romantic relationship, insisting their encounters were consensual. But his story changed again. This time, he admitted they had been intimate on the night before her death. He also claimed that on the morning she died, they went to a pharmacy together to buy a pill to prevent pregnancy, an attempt, he said, to resolve a problem between them. Gökhan maintained his innocence, but the growing pile of contradictions only strengthened the prosecution's case. The court ordered him held in custody as the investigation expanded into two separate trials, one for blackmail and physical assault, and another for incitement to suicide. The first trial began in April 2022. During the third hearing, the defense once again argued that Gökhan was innocent, portraying the relationship as mutual and voluntary. The accused appeared by video link from prison, emotionless and composed. When the verdict was read, there was outrage. The court sentenced Gökhan, then 43, to 2 years in prison and a $300 fine for blackmail, plus 4 additional months for assault. Aleyna's family called the ruling an insult. Their lawyer denounced the verdict as incomplete, arguing that the court ignored the evidence of sexual violence and other victims. Then, in July 2022, the second and most crucial verdict arrived. The court found Gökhan guilty of incitement to suicide, a charge equivalent to intentional homicide in Turkish law when threats or coercion are involved. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The courtroom erupted in tears and applause. At last, justice seemed within reach. Under Turkish law, a life sentence without parole means a minimum of 24 years behind bars, though prisoners convicted of crimes as severe as Gökhan's rarely receive early release. His defense appealed the decision, but in October 2024, 3 years after Aleyna's death, the appeals court upheld the life sentence. Gökhan was officially declared responsible for the death of Aleyna. The verdict brought a measure of peace to her grieving family and became a landmark in Turkey's ongoing struggle against gender-based violence. Women's rights organizations across the country hailed the ruling as a victory, not just for Aleyna, but for every victim whose cries for help had been ignored. Today, Aleyna's name is remembered as a symbol of that struggle. Her tragic death and her desperate attempts to seek help continue to echo throughout Turkey. Aleyna's voice, silenced too soon, now speaks for thousands of women still fighting to be heard.